Thanks for listening to Creative Control. While I have you here, please consider supporting Youth Empowerment and Support Services, otherwise known as YES. Based in Edmonton, Alberta, YES provides immediate and low-barrier overnight and day shelter, temporary supportive housing, and individualized wraparound supports for young people aged 15 to 24. They work collaboratively within a network of care focused on the prevention of youth homelessness by providing youth with the necessary supports to stabilize their housing, improve their well-being, build life skills, connect with community, and avoid re-entry into homelessness. Learn more about how to donate or otherwise support YES by visiting yess.org.
Hey, this is Nicole calling from Hamilton, and I needed to let everyone know that I really proudly support Vish and Creative Control. I have for many years, I will for many more, as long as he keeps delivering these amazing interview podcasts. When you hear one of Vish's interviews, you think he's known this guest for years, they're good friends, but the truth is he approaches every interview, whether it's sort of up-and-coming indie artists or established icons or like famous, intimidating comedians with a really deep, genuine curiosity, so he's never met this person, and the same really warm candor, as so he's known them forever. I think it really lends to a great chat, no matter who he's talking to, and for that reason, I think you should throw Vish, $1 a month? He's got jokes. The jokes make it worth it. Support Creative Control on Patreon.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today. I'm Vish's wife, and remember, when you name a dog Janet or Timothy, you are dragging humanity down just a little bit.
Eric San is a world-renowned turntablist, author, multi-instrumentalist, producer, illustrator, composer, and DJ based in Montreal, Quebec. Best known as Kid Koala, San has established himself as one of the most ambitious and innovative musicians and performers in the world, often creating truly original stage productions and multimedia works centered around his unique music. His latest such project is called Creatures of the Late Afternoon, which spawns a related series of 4 EPs, but is also a double LP whose gatefold album art becomes an interactive board game and will eventually include an elaborate live show, among other related ventures. While the EPs are rolling out as I speak, the album version of Creatures of the Late Afternoon is available worldwide on April 14th, 2023. And in the next while, Kid Koala is hitting the road with his collaborator, Leilani. As such, Eric and I reconnected recently for an in-depth talk about this fascinating new album and the board game's band-oriented and music business-related concept, why he decided to deliver the record in such an interactive manner, his unique way of harvesting samples and pressing records from music that he writes, performs, and records himself, how being a beat-juggling DJ works exactly and what scratching actually does to vinyl, how he met and began working with Leilani and what their tour together will be like, other future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, which is the primary source of revenue for all the work that goes into this podcast. Thank you for supporting the show at patreon.com/Creative Control. With additional support from Blackbird Music, a wonderful record store with locations in both Edmonton and Calgary, Alberta, and very friendly employees who will happily help you find the things you're looking for. Say you want to order the new Kid Koala album, Creatures of the Late Afternoon. Well, you just head over there to blackbird.ca and you type in Kid Koala, Creatures of the Late Afternoon in the search box, and lo and behold, it should be available for them to order in for you, and you can pick it up or wherever you live in the world, and maybe they'll ship it to you. I don't know their full shipping policies, but you know what I'm saying. So blackbird.ca for more information. Plus in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 750 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Kid Koala with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hey, Eric, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks for asking. Where in the world are you today?
In Montreal. Snowy Montreal.
Oh, you think you've got snow? I'm in Edmonton. There's so much snow. It's bonkers.
Everything ready to tour in the snow.
Yes. Why are you doing this, first of all? Let's get right to that. I was going to ask you about Montreal, but I think we got to cut to the chase. You have organized yourself a winter tour. Mostly in Canada, I think, at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a couple dates in the States, but mainly in Canada. Yeah.
Why winter touring? You're a seasoned vet. Most seasoned vets would be like, this is not the season to be extensively touring.
I think what happened is just looking at the schedule for the year, realized that there was this window around the release and rollout of Creatures of the Late Afternoon, which is my forthcoming album / board game, that there was this little window where Leilani's schedule and my schedule were open, so we could actually, throw a couple parties together. And so it's in conjunction with EP3 of a 4 EP set. This is EP3 actually features the song that she's on the album. And so I said, oh yeah, that's right around the time our song together actually drops. So let's just get out and throw a few parties.
Yeah. So the song in question is Things Are Gonna Change, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And my son today, as it was playing during breakfast, said, is this from Powerpuff Girls? Is it Power or Powder? I don't even know.
She is absolutely, she does really bring that energy to the track. Absolutely. In fact, when I first heard her vocals, I was introduced to her work through a mutual friend, David Cho, who's an artist in Los Angeles. She'd done some music for his show, his Hulu show. And so I just started digging into the stuff she was working on. I was really excited about all of her output, including her animation, including her solo electronic vocal stuff, but also she has this one-person band that she started called the Pez Heads, which is her surf punk alter ego, and I was super into that stuff also, and I just totally dug her vibe. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, do you want to come shout on this track? And she was into it, so it's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's seems to be drawn to animated performance style and animated aesthetic generally. My daughter has become familiar with you because she got herself recently a little koala suit.
Oh, wow.
And I said, you look like... Yeah, I said, you look like Kid Koala. She's like, who? She's only 8. And I was talking about you today at breakfast. So we've been listening to the record quite a lot. Oh, my God. The number of times I've had to rewind Robo Hotel 1 on your album, just constantly. By the way, so I shouldn't misspeak. As you know, Eric, we've known each other a long time. I am very special. I'm a special guy, and I get things in advance. I'm just kidding. I'm not special, but I have. I want to get to this before I go too much further. The notion that it's EPs. But a record is coming out in April, and ultimately the EPs are chunks of the album. Let's get to that first of all. Is that correct?
Okay, so each EP, they're kind of a limited edition set. And so each EP features 2 songs from the album, some instrumental version of another album track that is not on the album, and then bonus scratch sounds and bonus board game sounds on those EPs that won't be on the double vinyl.
Oh, so I'm not special. I thought I was special. I was going to say.
No, you are. You are, because you are actually the first person I've spoken to that I think has heard the whole album.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I've heard the whole thing and we love it. I love it. The family loves it.
You've heard like all 20 tracks of Creatures.
All 20 tracks have been blasting in the house and in the minivan when we go driving because it has become a special request.
Yes.
Can we hear the Kid Koala album? And I say yes.
Oh wow,
sure.
awesome.
Yeah, no,
Glad
they
to
like
hear
it.
that.
The kids like it in the house, and I love it as well. But
Glad to
these
hear
these EPs you're describing, are they digital only at this point?
They're vinyl only, actually.
Oh, they're vinyl only. Okay, so
yes.
I see. Okay, I did not know
So,
that. All right.
So I will send you a set. They are 4 7-inch EPs, and back in the day when people would release 12-inch singles and stuff prior to the album, this is our mini version of that. So we're doing 4 7-inch limited edition EPs.
Wow.
And then the double album board game, which opens up, the gatefold jacket opens into the board game. Also has all the inserts for, I think, over 150 game cards. So you could play that game. That release also has board game tracks. So you could just play the game with just the double album version. But if you have these EPs, you just have more music and more board game tracks that you can throw into the mix if you choose to do that.
That's amazing. And obviously, first of all, thank you for your generosity. Obviously, we would love to listen to those here in the house. So thank you for the offer, but also thank you for your generosity as a musician. That's very cool that you've done this, and it's a big event. So I want to get into the concept of Creatures of the Late Afternoon because, but I also want to be careful not to distract. Sometimes when you do stuff like this, Eric, I think you probably know this. The concept can distract people from the music. Oh, it's a board game? I'm just going to talk about the board.
Actually,
you know what I'm saying? Like it'll be
it's a bit sleight of hand. Is it? It's just like it's a board game. I'm supposed to listen to this while playing the board game. It's like no, the album itself actually stands alone as a double album, actually a 20-track album, and the board game tracks are bonus tracks that are actually after a locked groove on each side.
Yes.
So if you were to drop the needle at the beginning of a side on the album, you'll just play that side, the whatever.
Yeah.
It's a double album, so it'd be 4 or 5 tracks per side, and then it'll hit a lock groove, and then at which point you can play another side of the record or what have you. But when you're in, quote, board game mode, it does have these bonus board game tracks, extra bands that have been cut close to the center sticker of each side. That you can use for specific moments in the game. And they kind of act like timers, say in Jeopardy.
Yeah.
You have your Jeopardy theme. So it's that type of thing, only way funkier.
So this is so basically the if you're playing the board game, the run out groove is the most essential part. Ostensibly for the board
There's
game.
a couple grooves at the end of each side.
Grooves.
So one is called dig. They're dig timers, and that's a little 90-second beat that I set up. So it's a track that's a timer for a certain point in the game.
Okay.
Are we going to get into the board game? We could. Yeah, we could.
No, I want to totally get into the whole concept because it's very ambitious. I know you're an ambitious guy. You like fun things.
Right.
You do fun stuff. Those of us who know you, but this is another level, I think. Yeah.
So just adding a level of interactivity or a different way to interface with a vinyl album, not just letting it play. And by that, I mean, obviously, if you're a scratch DJ, you just start scratching stuff, which everyone's welcome to do also. Yeah. But I think for people that just want to play the game, what it does add is this, musical element to certain moments in the game. To provide a little more energy or tension. Yeah. So, for instance, the other band, which does end in the lock groove at the end, is a staring contest tone. Yeah. And that's just this very eerie little, 30-second cut that then hits a lock groove, so it can just play indefinitely depending on how long or how good you are at staring. So there's certain moments in the game where you might land on a space like staring contest. You have to challenge somebody to the staring contest, and then you can win their cards if you actually beat them in the staring contest. But I thought it would be funny to have like a musical underscore to that moment in the game. And similarly to the timer, there's a sort of primordial soup in the middle of the game board, and there's a bunch of memory cards. This is all stuff that's on the my backstage rider. And so you're playing memory, meaning you're just trying to match pairs, that
Yes,
game.
yes.
Everyone's been playing that. So while that's happening, we needed to design something to just keep that part of the game time locked. So you have 90 seconds. So I had to make these 90-second kind of funky tracks to keep that energy and that intensity going. And it's fun when people are playing it, the beats are riding and you're frantically flipping over and trying to, remember where all the cards are. And it gives it a little juice in that moment in the game. Yeah. But the concept of the game is basically you're riding around the game board in a tour van and you're going to these apartment parties and you're meeting a plethora of musical instrument playing creatures. And the object of the game is to kind of recruit or just sort of organize bands of creatures to write songs in multiple genres.
Yeah.
So, for you to complete a song, you would need to go to enough parties and meet a creature that plays bass, a creature that plays drums, and a creature that can do vocals.
Yeah, yeah.
And then in other parts of the game, you kind of land on flea market. For instance, you would draw one of the flea market cards where you could discover a recording device or a musical instrument. And so for you to complete a song, you need a song genre. You need three creatures to perform the song. You need some studio time. You need an instrument and a recording device.
Right.
And the song genres are all like life experience cards. So there's these kind of whammy style squares every now and then on the game board where, say, I don't know, for example, flat tire on your touring van, you might lose an instrument or you might lose something, but you gain life experience.
Right.
And so when you draw that card, it might be like heartbreak, or it might be like dance song, or it might be a workout track or something. And so it's fun. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun just testing the game.
I was going to ask if anything in particular, like I don't imagine you've ever built a game from scratch before. No pun intended. Is that true?
Yeah. Not really to this extent. I think the pandemic was a perfect time to kind of brainstorm a bunch of ideas and
yeah,
have it iterated in different cards and different forms. So we tested many versions of the game before finalizing on what ended up being in there. But it was a fun process. Yeah. I think my only other game experience would have been video game,
right?
Creation with Floor Kids or something. But this is definitely something else. It was in terms of it being 4 players all up to 4 players at the same time, and just trying to balance that feeling. You get into the game, stuff starts happening, you start meeting creatures, there's the anticipation of almost finishing a song, but then all of a sudden you lose your studio time because something happens, and then you have to find a way to get it back. And it's for laughs, really, but it's fun. And I can't wait for you to play it.
No, I can't wait to play it. Now, most people who play board games, the activity is represented by cards or something you collect, like you're talking about. But like, if you're playing Monopoly, you don't then really become a real estate agent. If you play Clue, you don't gotta murder someone. You just pretend.
Right, you don't
but this is an interesting. This is an interesting game because it involves the idea of creating music and creating a band. Are there parts of the game where the participants must sing or actually come up with a melody to proceed, or is it simply the concept of, well, my card says we have to write a song, but we're going to just pretend to do it? Do you know what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, no, you don't need to sing to play this game, but you do need to, assemble a band. In a way, it's almost like band management.
Okay, so it's an absolute,
But in a way,
absolute
it's funny because I played the game with musician friends, and some moments they're like, "Wow, this is too real." You know, like we have everything in place, we just can't find our bass player somehow. It's just like, you know.
So you made a kind of music infrastructural game, as it seems to me, the music industry is in real trouble, and people are trying to figure out what to do with it. Do you think there's? I don't mean to be bleak about it.
You think the solution is here?
No, but I wonder. There's a few things going on with this, because as musicians these days, I know you know this all too well. And when I say these days, I want to say over the last 15 years. It hasn't been enough for a musician to make music. You have to know how to do multi-platform things, social media, live streams, video. Like, it's not just enough that I made a record. You really got to pop. You have to do all these things. This could be an interesting addition to this if everyone starts coming up with different ways to get people to interact with their music beyond the music, if that makes any sense. Did that enter your mind? Like, I know you like cool ideas and concepts. Don't, like, good Lord. I've been to your shows and people are taking naps. I've been to your shows and people are doing aerobics. Like, you have a knack for getting people to immerse themselves in the songs and the music you make beyond just passive listening. So I appreciate that. But do you think this is symptomatic of something going on in music culture right now, like what you've done here?
I wonder. I think for me personally, I always felt like context was kind of important. If I chose to, well, I'm kind of very inspired by the weather. I mean, just quite simply.
Yeah.
Normally, this time of year, I would just be making ambient, melancholic instrumental music, just because of the weather, and I'm just trying to channel that and enjoy that's the tempo and the pace of the whole city at this time of year, and just kind of lock into that and try to make some music inspired by that. Similar, like once the snow starts melting, then the drum machines come out, the scratching gets louder and faster, and all this, it's living in a city with 4 seasons is fun for me, it's stimulating. That said, if I go play in Brazil with an ambient record and people are standing on the dance floor holding their beers going, when's he going to drop a beat? I don't want to make that awkward situation for people too much. Like, I'd rather design a show that says, hey, this show's called Space Cadet. It was recorded on headphones when my daughter was just born. All these tracks were lullabies. Yeah. And so this idea of it being like, okay, so for you to understand that and actually like lock into where the context of why this music was made, I think it just makes it more enjoyable for people.
No, absolutely.
So that they're not confused going like, I thought I was here to see this or that. It doesn't mean that that's the only style of music I'm going to keep doing for the rest of my career. In fact, like the seasons, I like to go back and revisit styles and tempos and genres of music. And I think with Creatures, I don't know. Creatures, we're going to add another thing into the mix, which is going to make it sound like overly meta or something. But Creatures is also the score for a forthcoming stage production in the style of Euphonia Must Fall and the Storyville Mosquito, which we've been touring for the last 10 years. So the third production will be Creatures of the Late Afternoon. And it is, in short, the genre, if I may, of that show will be an action film.
Oh.
And so that's the reason why there's a lot of quite action sequence type tracks on the album, as well as, sweet moments and sort of underlying love songs, story moments, and things like that. It's all in there. Yeah. But that stuff might not be clear to people until they actually see the show in about 3 years or something. But in the meantime, I do think like it just works. Hopefully as an album, or at least like you said, something that you can drive around to with the family and enjoy it.
It's interesting. I guess some of us maybe don't think of video games or board games as having narratives, but they kind of do. They have a beginning and an end usually, don't they? I never really think about it that way. Like you start the story with potentially nothing, and there's usually goals and objectives and adventures along the way. Like you lose all your money on Boardwalk. I keep using Monopoly because that's the game I probably played the most as a...
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
So So I feel like it's like what you're talking about. It's probably really custom built to make a soundtrack for sort of a soundtrack connected to a board game, but will also lead to, like you say, like an action film or a stage production. In my head, now that you said it this way, it kind of all makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it feels like the pacing of it. I think when I was designing the game, and then testing it with my family and just trying to see, okay, how long before one of these music tracks drops, just on average. I wanted to make sure that there was this sort of like moment of musical beats coming in and sort of amping up the board game instead, even if it's just for 90 seconds during that timer. Like, when do we get that adrenaline bump in the board game, right? And so that, adjusted the number of types of cards we had, like how many squares to pick up said card to go into that dig time mode where you drop that beat. In a way, it was just trying to balance it, almost like you would say a DJ set or a band would write a set for music. The game itself, I think it takes about an hour to play, maybe 70 minutes for a 4-player game. And so it really just felt comfortable to me. It's like, okay, within that, I do want to go to different vibes and experiences, but actually just have fun with the format. Really, it's all in the name of fun. And to me, I've got obviously thousands of records that I've just collected since I was a kid, and I love vinyl. I love the artwork. I love the sound. I love scratching vinyl. I love, all that. And I just wanted to see, it was like, oh, is there another way we could, or another way we can use this format and bring it into this other experience. So having it underscore a board game, I thought was just a fun little twist on it, and I guess it's kind of when we started doing Satellite Turntable Orchestra, for instance, where there was a show where everybody in the audience is seated at a turntable station. And then we had all these like harmony tone records distributed there. And then certain stations would light up certain colors. We could conduct, this half of the room play the third in the chord, the other half play the fifth, and this, and so it was all color coded. So your turntable station would turn a color, and you would find the record that was that same color and drop the needle on it. And in a way, people were creating the music with me during the show, and I just liked that as a concept, but also in practice, is like it is that sum is greater than the parts situation where you felt like, oh, everybody's contributing a little bit to the sound, and together it's just a choir of final harmonies happening or something. And that idea, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is different than, oh, we're gonna go see a DJ and just dance to it or just watch them do their thing. Rather it's like, oh, we're gonna do something together involving your contribution to the music also. And so I think, I don't know, just having fun with the format. I've always liked to package records in a way that have a more playful kind of angle on it if I can.
Absolutely, yeah, and I appreciate how much interaction goes into everything you do, frankly. Like you really are someone who tries to galvanize people and get them involved in things, and that's cool. You said a few things there that I want to follow up on about your love of vinyl and scratching. I was reading about this record, and I want to get into this concept of self-sampling, because I was looking at the long list of instruments that you yourself played and then captured yourself and then pressed onto vinyl and then incorporated into the making of this record. First of all, how long?
It's a perfect way to spend a pandemic.
So I don't expect you to name every instrument necessarily, and I don't have them all in front of me, and I think it might be a little boring for people to hear us just read an inventory. But roughly, how many instruments did you play on this record, first of all?
Oh, I don't know, 50 maybe?
50, right. Okay.
I mean, if you're including some could be considered instrument design, but even like a string of modular effects or guitar pedals. No,
that all counts. No, absolutely.
Could
that
be
counts.
turned into like a little rhythmic motif, but you're there, trying to create the sounds to then be your source material. Yeah.
Instead of getting really specific, can you, in a sort of general categories, what kinds of instruments did you like? I mean, obviously, please say like, well, I played guitar.
Yeah, I mean, there's bass, drums, guitar, piano. I mean, piano was my first instrument.
Yeah.
Then even within bass, there's, upright bass. There was wind instruments, clarinet, saxophone, trumpet. There was a little bit of just about everything. I will say this, I'm not proficient at many of those instruments. My first instrument was piano, and then turntable. Like I started that when I was 4, and then piano, and then turntables was sort of when I was 12.
Yeah.
In grade school, I joined band. I played clarinet. And then over the years, just from playing with bands and goofing around at rehearsals, I just started noodling around on guitars and basses and things like that. So it's more just part of the palette, right? Because sometimes
you're grabbing sounds as much as you are playing, sophisticated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the stuff, for instance, I would actually play the line on the Hammond organ and record it through the Leslie, but then I would cut that whole line onto the record. And then once it was on a record, I could kind of rephrase the line just by how I was pushing and pulling on the record and skipping notes and stuff like that. It gave me another opportunity to kind of remix, if you will, that first line. So the first line might have been something that just fit chord structure wise over that moment. But then once it was on vinyl and I was like, let's play around, see what else we can squeeze out of it that will surprise you. I think when you're working this way, for me, it's always about trying to get that moment where it lights you up a bit. You're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, or I didn't think,
Yeah.
The point wasn't for it to sound like a band. The point was for it to sound like a bunch of DJs all playing together.
No, like I said earlier, my son's instinct when he heard your song with Leilani, things are going to change. They assumed it was a sample, and that sparked me to say to my wife, you know what Eric actually did, and I told her what I just sort of conveyed to everyone just now, that you did a lot of this yourself, and then and I don't know if you got to this, but you actually have a lathe at home where you cut the records. So my wife was like, "Really? He does that?" I'm like, "Yeah." But what I was foggy on was how long you've been doing things this way. Have you been doing this way a long time?
I think since I got the lathe probably in 2009-ish or something. So I've been cutting my own vinyl, not for every album, but at least for even tools that I would use in shows or when I was playing in a band. I would cut a custom plate just so that I would have like sounds that I wanted to be able to scratch.
And so does that lead you to less external sampling?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think say this record, Floor Kids, the Music to Draw To stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So almost like close to 0%. Yeah. That's, I mean,
but and it's not just like, oh, we're just trying to replace it. I actually genuinely just got more into the production side of things. Like, for instance, say in the 90s, it would be like, oh, I want to find like the perfect snare drum and or something, and stack like this snare drum with this tambourine, with this hi-hat, with this kitchen pot being hit, kind of stack them to make like the ultimate snare drum.
Yeah.
And back then it was, you were digging for that on records. And then now I've actually just gotten very much into the process of like, okay, well, those snare drums, the sounds of the snare drums from those, say, Stax Motown records or something like that, how did they get those sounds? And just studying that, even watching any footage or looking at old photographs of where the mics were placed, what kind of mics they were using, those types of things. It's just fun,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I got really deep into that. Yeah, like it's basically my studio now is just this landfill of kind of half working devices that still have a special tone to them. So often I won't even recalibrate. Like I might buy a keyboard that's the oscillators are all kind of slightly out of tune, and I said, okay, before I get this tuned up back to factory spec, I'm gonna just record a few things on it first and just see if those ghosts in the machine have something to say, and I like doing that, which I actually address in the board game, there are things like, I think, 3-string guitar or something like you could get at the flea market, but you can still make a song out of it if you have an idea and the feel. Right?
So if you like something that you've cut and pressed, how many copies of it do you make when you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to need this for the show. This is part of the production now. Right. Do you make multiple copies?
No, just one, unless I'm deciding it's something that I need to beat juggle.
Yeah, that's what
which is basically like, if you listen to the album, all the drums, like, whether they were played drums, like I played the drums on a kit and then just took 2 bars of it and cut it to 2 copies of a record, so I can just kind of backspin them back and forth, just because I like the push and pull and all the pickup scratches you can do. It's just old school hip hop rules, really.
Yeah. Can I ask you a naive question?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for those who don't know how it works, for record collectors, a scratch on a record that impacts the playback is heartbreaking. Sometimes I'm watching DJs and you're watching what they're doing, and they're using their fingers and they're manipulating the records. The naive question that I've never thought to ever ask a DJ is, what is the wear and tear like on these records? I mean,
pretty bad. I mean, it depends on how heavy you have your needles weighted. And in my case, when I'm playing, live, and you're in a club with a lot of subwoofers everywhere and the stage is rumbling, and so you pretty much need to put more weight on your needles and just make sure it stays in the groove. And so if you're doing that and pulling the record back and forth over the same part of the record, eventually it does burn out. But honestly, I actually like that sound too. It's really weird. It's kind of like, I don't know, worn in jeans or something to me. Like, I enjoy that.
But do records become unusable?
Yeah. I mean, if you're saying, I mean, not for me personally. Like, to me, it just adds like decades to something. All of a sudden.
No. But I mean, to your show,
it just starts sounding more like the Tom Waits gravelly version of whatever you're scratching, and I love that. It's just has that extra texture.
How often do you have to replace a key record in your stage show, or
right? Oh, well, okay. So, for instance, if it's a stage vinyl, I might actually cut what I need. Like, for instance, back to the idea, it's like, I played a Hammond organ line. It's like, a 6-note motif or something. And then I might cut that in succession onto my show vinyl like 4 or 5 times or something.
There you go. That's what I'm getting at.
That'll be, but I'm not cutting like a whole other record. I'm fitting all that into like 1 millimeter on the or 2 millimeters on the vinyl.
See, okay. Sorry, I hope that's not too naive a question. I'm sure there's people listening that wonder how these things work, and I don't mean to get too how to
and
make
it's
records,
funny because it's just I don't know. I've been using records for so long, and it's still magic to me. I understand the physics, obviously, but it's still magic in terms of how can all this sound, whether it's a symphony or just like one note, on a keyboard, whatever you're cutting about, how can it store all of that information just on one stereo needle, Yeah. And I think it's fun,
Yeah. So
I don't sit like, I'm not, people always say, oh, you're still using vinyl like at your shows, and like we don't really see. It's not because I'm some hyper purist about it. It's just I enjoy. That's what I kind of was raised playing. I don't know.
Oh, do people assume you would be using more backing tracks at this point or something?
Oh, no. But to say like skip to like a digital vinyl interface, which they have now also.
Yeah. Right.
And there's something about, for me, I mean, just the joy of just like, well, maybe not lugging the records around. That's not like my favorite part, but in terms of just flipping through records and like memorizing, just from the center sticker, what that is, and knowing, that record's, I have to remember these drop cues and these rotations on it. It just became kind of second nature after years of playing.
What a weird question, because ostensibly those records, and particularly in your case, based on what we were just talking about, the self-sampling, those are your instruments. I mean, it would be weird for someone to be like, you're still playing a guitar on stage? Like, don't you know you don't have to do that?
No,
Like,
look, you can't be a DJ and not like technology. I love technology. It's just one of those things where I guess what's the mode that's like the easiest for you to express yourself? And to me, it's always still just been like the analog side of it, the tactile side of it, you know? Yeah. I've seen people use iPads that have like just literally scratching, doing a scratch motion on the glass, and it's actually very accurate, you know?
Right.
And it's just like, oh wow, that's crazy how tight in terms of the timing it is, you know? But if you were just to ask me like, what's my happy place, it was just like ever since I was a kid, it was just like I'll drop the needle on a record or maybe a new record I found at the flea market and just like go on this little adventure and see what happens.
No, absolutely. You are an expert in your field. I don't see why you would give it up just because of the way technology is changing. The title,
or I'm a bit too much of a Luddite to be like, what? You're saying I have to like change all these into MP3 files and then put them on a something drive or whatever.
Well, I think as we get older, musicians will be like, I'm just sick of lugging these amps up these stairs and these drums. It does get to you physically. Like, it's a really significant part of being a traveling musician is the physical rigor of the thing. And I'm sure there's probably part of you that's
I was just talking about like carrying turntables to the gigs. A lot of people like to play on rentals, and sometimes I have to do that also.
Yeah.
But obviously, if it's a local gig, I remember just carrying them, you know, and it was like my weights.
It's part.
Was my upper body workout was like carrying my records and my turntables to the gig.
It's kind of part of the deal. What I'm getting at is it's hard, but there's something romantic about it too. The tangible physical toll of lugging your turntables to the stage and not. I don't recall, in my experience, you rarely bring a sound person with you on the road. Is that right?
It depends. Well, some of these bigger productions we need to.
Oh, of course, right.
Like strings and stuff, but sometimes if it's just me DJing, I can handle it.
You just never know what you're gonna get. I mean, when I've toured or done promoted shows with electronic or more electronic artists, I know that my regular sound people are like, what? Occasionally they're like, okay, I guess we just DI everything. Like, how does this work? And they,
I remember.
Yeah, and I've been to hip hop.
Members like, oh yeah, can we scoop out a little bit 5 kilohertz and take out some of the rumble? Like, why? It's because there's actually gonna be bass.
Yeah, like there's that.
What is happening right now?
That, you know there's that challenge too. But I know you've, like I said earlier, you're a seasoned vet, so I'm sure you're kind of up for whoever you encounter if you don't have your own people.
It's funny now when shows kind of like technically go sideways, it's almost like enjoying the fact that we're all there experiencing it together and be like, all right, we're gonna sort this out together.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what the sound checks are for. But yes, everywhere you go, the rubber stages and stuff like that, I'm like preemptively I'm thinking about it right now because I know Leilani jumps around a lot.
Yes.
And she doesn't weigh that much, but she jumps. So I'm kind of like enough to skip it, So I'm thinking about that also, knowing that, hey, it's not just going to be me up there. She'll be up there rocking with me. So what type of, shock absorption technology can I bring for that? Because I still want to do it, all my scratches on that.
You need those like stress mats that people put in their kitchens under every table. I bet that would help.
I've tried all kinds of stuff.
I'm sure you have. Yeah.
Memory foam and like insoles for shoes and all kinds of stuff. And they all have their benefits on.
I'm still my turntable, even though I don't need it in this house. It's still on hockey pucks from my Guelph house because the floor would shift and the needle would skip often. And I finally figured out the hockey pucks helped. So I still have these orange hockey pucks because they're the heavier hockey pucks. They're the, I forget which version of hockey, like basically floor hockey pucks, I think are heavier than the anyway, everyone's doing what they can to keep their records playing. And I'm sure you'll come up with something. It'll be fine. I want to talk to you about this tour with Leilani and whatever you can tell us about, what I assume will be a more elaborate stage show, but for this record and for this concept. But before we get to that, I just want to, I feel like Creatures of the Late Afternoon as a title is a riff on something. Can you talk a little bit about why that's the name of the record?
Well, I just thought it sounded kind of interesting and fun, but you know, you have things like Creatures of the Black Lagoon and those types of things, like those old B movies that I was very inspired by as a child. Everything from the design, the DIY, kind of like crappy practical effects that they would use in those films.
Yeah,
always, you know, really got my imagination going. But Creatures of the Late Afternoon is also within the context of the show that we're currently developing, and is about a cast of creatures who all live in this one apartment block. And let's just say this monolithic like technology company comes into the neighborhood,
sure,
and is like threatening their entire habitat and their, you know, their actual existence. So they kind of band together through music to try to save their habitat. And the idea of Creatures of the Late Afternoon was almost like, oh, they're actually on the edge of extinction, you know? Like if a day was like your life, they're in the late afternoon, like this is the last chapter. Or it's like, and you're hearing this a lot. It's actually quite sad. I watch a lot of nature shows with my daughter, and we'll be, you know, watching and being, oh, look at this creature, it's so cute. And then, you know, within like a minute, they're like, unfortunately, you know, they're the last 17 of these or whatever. You're like, no. Yeah. And so it was kind of like, I mean, yeah, just kind of taking that all and how fragile everything is as far as biodiversity, humans included.
Of course, yes, we're
nothing like a pandemic to like bring that into clear focus.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit of that, but that's kind of a couple of things that inspired the title.
So stereotypically, musicians are thought of as creatures of the night, but that also means they don't rise until potentially the late afternoon. So I wondered if it was a play on that as well.
Yes, that is very true, and that would be definitely at least. Well, I mean, in my 20s, that would have described my circadian rhythm. Yeah,
getting up at waking up at 3 p.m. or 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. That's not unusual for a touring musician.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, I still don't usually keep anything that I record before midnight.
Oh.
And so even if I'm working in the studio all day, a lot of it might just be more like practicing or just like writing stuff.
Yeah.
But the recorded takes, something that happens, you know, in those after hours when it gets a little drifty, you know what I mean? And it just works, you know? Yeah. And so because of that, I'm just prone to like often, ever since I was a teenager, like, oh, the sun just came up. You know, how long have I been working in the studio and just being lost in that time and space, you know? So yeah, the idea of like, oh, my actual alert, like office hours might not start till the afternoon. And my manager actually knows this. Like if she has like a bunch of things she wants to talk about, like important, you know, planning decisions or schedules. She's like, okay, let's do an afternoon meeting. Because in the morning I'll either be like, sure, and then realize like 4 hours later, like, what did I just agree to?
Thank you for making our appointment, by the way. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
Oh no, but like I said, that was more like in my 20s,
right.
You know, now that. Since the family expansion, like obviously, as you know,
absolutely,
you recalibrate.
Yeah.
And I find you just need less sleep in general.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, I agree with you. And I think it's by now pretty well known that musicians like Bob Dylan and Neil Young have said they don't record till the sun goes down. Like they do not capture their music until it's evening. So I think you're onto something. It's something about, maybe it's because musicians often play shows at that hour. I don't know. So no, it's interesting.
I mean, literally decades of being like, hey, the most on alert you have to be, it would be like midnight.
Yeah. Weirdly,
that's normally like back, I'd say less so now because we're trying to book shows more in soft seater theaters and other types of venues that don't have the show starting at midnight or whatever. But from decades of just being in the clubs, I remember like, you could kind of just, at least on tour, just kind of be in that a little bit of a daze in terms of, you know, sleep deprivation days for most of the daylight hours, and then you start waking up like when the sun sets. It's kind of funny.
Well, I have come to feel like certain days, Monday, like to me, Sunday, Monday, Friday, they all have like very particular vibes compared to the rest of the week. And I think the same could be said for 10, 11, midnight. Like you start to just feel a bit different, like something's changed. And so that's how I feel. So absolutely. I agree with you. And I feel like you touched upon this a little bit by saying that Leilani jumps around a lot. Can you talk a little bit about how
I mean, it's funny. Your child said she brought that Powerpuff Girl energy to the track, and she does. I mean, she's a literal like ball of energy on stage. It's really great to be around.
So the upcoming tour dates, as we're speaking, it's going to be a little stripped down representation of Creatures of the Late Afternoon with you and Leilani. Is that like in a sense, or is it very elaborate?
Oh, no. This is not even... these are kind of just like parties we're throwing.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so the show Creatures of the Late Afternoon, like I said, it's in development, and it's going to be one of the bit larger stage productions, with the multi-cameras and the puppetry and the miniature sets and everything.
Okay.
Leilani will... I mean, so far, we'll see how busy she gets, but the plan is that she'll be part of... that touring party also when it comes out. So it'll be her and I and the string section together doing these tracks underneath the action of those scenes. Yeah. But again, this is years away, so we should probably just not like
literally years away. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Because actually we've bottlenecked a bit because we were supposed to be on tour with Storyville Mosquito for the last 3 years, but we're just starting that now because it all got kind of postponed.
Of course.
So now all our engagements with Storyville Mosquito are starting to activate now. So our Mosquito tour is essentially now for the next couple of years, and then Creatures will be after that. But I actually think that's kind of cool because people can just enjoy it as an album and then come
board
to
game.
the show actually
game
maybe
and
know
an
some of the tunes, you know what I mean? Rather than it just being all new information. But so as far as the setup for these shows, it's kind of just like a hybrid set between our stuff. So I wanted her to, have the space to like do some of her material and me to, go and do some of my DJ, scratchy stuff, and then actually, do a couple of the tracks that we've worked on together, including Things Are Gonna Change. So it's more just like a party. It's it's a mini winter tour to just sort of light it up, while our schedules align. So I'm excited to do it. She's really incredible. Like I think, like during the pandemic, that she was the only person I actually went to the studio and recorded in person with.
Right.
And her studio was actually her room. But it was funny. I walked into her because I heard all her stuff, and a lot of it is like already very accomplished sounding from a production standpoint. And I was just expecting all it. And she's like, no, this is how I get my sound. And she like opens her closet, and there's just all her clothes like hanging. And that was like the... normally you would have like some soundproofing or some way to deaden the reflections on. And she's like, no, I just shout like into my, hoodies or whatever. And I'm like, all right, whatever works. Cause it was sounding great on your record.
I do, like, in her music, I do pick up on some hoodie resonance. That's what I pick up on.
Exactly.
That's what it sounds like.
It's that warmth,
I'm like, is there some cotton? I feel like there's some cotton in the songs. That's what I hear. Yeah,
exactly. But these are California. I mean, she lives in Pomona, so it's like, these are California hoodies. They're not like Canadian.
They're probably
gonna have to get
probably
her
made of hemp.
I actually warned her. I said, "Hey, do you have any like snow boots or anything, for this tour?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna snow there, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." She's not ready at all. But it was really great because I actually got to her studio, and all along the wall, this was like this museum. Floor to ceiling, like all this artwork in all these different styles. I'm talking like an impressionist, oil paint stuff.
Oh, wow.
Or like pencil sketches and all. It's just like a beautiful. And I was just like walking around the room, like looking at all these pieces. I'm like, oh, I really like this one. Like, who's this? You know, and she's like, oh, I did that. And then I'm like, what? And then I go over and there'd be this, you know, photorealistic, you know, Renaissance style painting. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. She's like, oh yeah, I did that too. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Like,
Okay, so you might be kindred spirits in your.
Well, she can paint circles around me, but I was like, wow, she's definitely like a polymath of sorts. And musically, like same thing. You know, when I heard the Pez Head stuff, I was like, oh, this is rad. Like, who'd you get on drums? And she's like, oh, no, I just punched those out like on a drum pad. I'm like, but how'd you get it to sound like actual drums with the reverb? And she's like, oh, I just used it. You know, she's just a natural.
Oh, nice.
It's incredible.
And I know you'll be too modest, but I think, I appreciate your ability to spot talent and skill in people. And there's probably a reason you've started working together. So I'm very excited to see, and for other people to see these shows you're going to be putting on. I mean, I know that the full-length vinyl, or my understanding anyways, the full-length version of the album will be out April 14th, 2023. And you mentioned the EPs are starting to circulate. Can you...
Yeah, so the EPs came out. The first one came out in December. The second one came out this month.
Yeah.
Third one next month, fourth one in March, and then the full album in April.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we just got them. We just got them in.
Oh, amazing.
So
yeah,
so I can even send you like a preview.
On. Really? Oh, that
game board and double vinyl. Yeah.
Oh, Eric, this is very, very generous. Thank you so much. I
absolutely.
Yeah, that's very lovely. Well, I appreciate that. And yes, I look forward to playing. We do have a board game night. We have a movie night. And we have a board game night. So we're going to throw this into the mix, and I'll play the record as we're playing. I can't wait to do this with my family. It's very exciting. So thank you for this. I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can learn more about all of these things that we've been talking about, and you. And And I mean, it sounds to me like you've already told us all your future plans. There's a lot coming up. But just to keep tabs on you, where would you like people to go?
You can just... If you go to kidkoala.com, like everything is there. You could get all the latest news and pre-order the album and board game or anything at the store there also. But yeah, any confirmed shows I'll list there. Upcoming shows will be there.
Yeah,
and a description of the different kinds of shows. Like we actually have 4 or 5.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on.
Of shows that are simultaneously touring. So even this first half of the year, I think we're doing Satellite Turntable Orchestra. We're doing a couple Storyville Mosquito shows, and these hybrid party sets with Leilani. So I know it's a lot of. It seems like a lot of information, but it's very clearly like delineated what's happening where on that site. So if you go there, and then all the social media stuff has links there also. So.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for that, and I hope people visit it because, like I say, you're someone who's inspired and influenced. Well, you've inspired me and many people like me, and you've definitely influenced so many people with your work. So, I just want to say I'm very happy for you, and congratulations on all of this work. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Given that we are still in January, I want to go out on a song from, I guess, probably one of the EPs, but also something that people will eventually hear on the album. I wonder if you can choose one for us and maybe tell us why it came to mind.
Oh, why? Like go out on a song.
Yeah.
Oh, so we don't want to do Leilani's track? We might as well. We've been talking about her and she wasn't here.
Well, we can.
Or do you think that's a little too up-tempo for winter?
No, I think that's great. I was just trying to be mindful of the fact that some of this stuff is yet to be released and all that sort of stuff, But if you...
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's all.
But you're Vish. You can scoop one track. I'm not going to say anything.
I said it earlier. I'm vaguely special. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, I would love to go out on that. It gives people a sample of maybe what your collaborative work might be like on stage.
So this is just one of the really like high energy jump up tracks on the record. And like I said, it's going to be part of, it's like an underscore for a scene in the show. That's this uplifting kind of call to action moment in the show.
Yeah.
With the creatures. So if you imagine that, I don't know, what would be the equivalent be? You know that montage in the movie when they like find the old dusty cabin and then everyone like bands together to like redo the wallpaper and like clean up all the garbage.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then resand the floors, and they're like, just imagine like all these creatures are kind of doing this while Leilani's shouting over this track. It's a fun one.
But I could also see this track starting to fade in at the end of a film and leading us to the credits. Like it's almost conclusive.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it leaves the movie on an upbeat way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, music supervision. I love that the same that where the catalyst or the original inspiration for a song, you know, people can find like ways for it to fit into their art or into their lives, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm very excited about this. So this is Things Are Gonna Change by Kid Koala featuring Leilani. This is from the wonderful new album, and well, you heard everything that it is. Creatures of the Late Afternoon, which again, the full length out in April. You're getting a special treat right now with this song. Eric, it's very lovely to have you back on this show, and it's always lovely to speak with you. So I want to thank you for this time and congratulate you again. And I hope we speak again. I wish you the best of luck in the future.
Right. Yeah, can't wait to get to. Well, you're coming to the show in Guelph?
Well, I live in Edmonton now, so I will.
Oh, you live in Edmonton? Oh, yeah, you're coming to the Edmonton show then.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Be fun. Yeah. All right, wicked. We'll see you at Starlight.
Now, I was thinking about this. There's a possibility that I have interviewed Eric, Kid Koala, in almost every, capacity I've had as a music journalist or broadcaster. He really, I mean, I think we've been talking for such a long time. We have this long history. So he's been on this show only, I think, a couple of times. But it's always fun. Thank you, Eric, so much for being back on Creative Control. And in this case, Kid Koala is on the 750th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available just about wherever you get your podcasts. Sometimes the bots on social media are like, are you on Spotify? That's how the bots sound. They have a strange voice. And I say, no, I think they're just trolling me, right? Because they know it's not on Spotify. I don't need to get into it, but we're not on Spotify. But we're everywhere else. And by we, I mean me. It's just me. If you can't find an episode that you're looking for, and or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. And like Creative Control on Facebook still. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Vish Creative, or you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Vishkhanna. You can also visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to sustain this podcast. $6 American or more a month grants you access to exclusive content, including receiving the episodes earlier than everybody else and potentially getting some bonus content if I'm able to spend extra time with my guests. And also I dig into my archives to find older things that I think you might find interesting, that, things that I captured before I started this show. So there's lots of little bonuses, but ultimately what you're doing is you're supporting the venture of the primary show, which you guys out there on Patreon, that's the primary source of revenue. There's some advertising, as you hear occasionally, but there's not much, and I don't like it. But I like the Patreon. It feels real, and it's very modest. Anyway, I'm doing my best, and thank you for supporting the show at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thanks also, again, to the amazing Alberta record retailer Blackbird Music, which you can learn more about and order things there on their website, blackbird.ca. Also want to thank Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario, for their in-kind support for this show. As always, thanks to my dear friend Jim Guthrie for letting me use some music that he has written and recorded. You can learn more at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Kid Koala. I hope you'll check out this amazing new project, Creatures of the Late Afternoon, and all of its forms. And I hope you'll subscribe to this podcast and follow it and tell all your friends about it too and spread the word. That really helps. And otherwise, I hope you're well and that we speak soon in this capacity, with me talking at you and you listening and maybe sending me messages. That means a lot. I will talk to you very soon. Thanks again. Bye for now.